This is Gdansk in northern Poland. It's my favourite place and I can be found here every summer. That is why there are so many videos relating to Gdansk and the beginning of World War II on this channel. This is the location of the former Polish post office in the free city of Danzig. Outside we can see a memorial which dates to 1979 to commemorate the defence of the building, which happened some 40 years earlier. Gdansk is today a very popular tourist destination, particularly in summer. The former post office is visited by tourists, although usually it is just for a quick visit. It is the location of a tragedy. In these 3 videos I shall give you a more complete explanation of what happened here, as well as explaining how it came about and what the aftermath was. As always with my videos, I shall show you what the location looks like today, and I shall be using some newsreel footage from the time as well. Poland was carved up between Prussia, Russia and Austria in the 18th century. One of the war aims of the Allied powers in World War I was to recreate Poland, and this was achieved by the Treaty of Versailles. However, access to the sea was a difficult point. The logical location for this access was Danzig, which had alternated between Polish and German rule, or their historic equivalents, throughout the previous 1,000 or so years. However, by 1919 the population was overwhelmingly German-speaking, and therefore granting such a large city to Poland presented problems. Some smaller towns, such as Lubawa for example, had been granted to Poland without a plebiscite because of the railway line or other transport link through the territory. The solution found at Versailles was to create the free city of Danzig, which was nominally independent, but Poland had the rights to control the postal, customs, port and railway services. This compromise meant that the aspiration of the Polish side of access to the sea was sort of met, while sort of meeting the national aspirations of the German-speaking population not to be handed over to Poland. This solution was overseen by the League of Nations and perhaps did not please anyone. It should be emphasized that although the free city of Danzig had many features of an independent state, it never was one in the sense of international law. Its sovereignty was limited on the one hand by the League of Nations, the guarantor of the constitution granted to this free city, and the indivisibility of its territory, as well as the court in disputes between the Second Polish Republic and the Free City, whilst Poland had economic, political and military powers which would not normally be part of any independent state. The League of Nations was represented by the High Commissioner, whilst the highest Polish body was the Commissioner General of the Republic of Poland. Locals in Danzig could vote for the unicameral parliament, the Volkstag. One of the rights granted to Poland by the Treaty of Versailles was to organise its own postal and telegraph service in Gdansk. This privilege was granted by the Paris Convention of the 9th of November 1920 and the Warsaw Agreement of the 24th of October 1921. 3 post offices were eventually set up. The first was in the port, and this office served exclusively postal communication. The second Polish post office in Gdansk was opened in 1921 at the main railway station and was for mail with the United Kingdom. The authorities in the Free City protested against the establishment of another Polish institution. The dispute lasted until 1923, when the matter was referred to the League of Nations. The solution found was that the post office could stay, but as a transshipment location only, and it was not open to the public. As a result, on the 5th of January 1925, a third office was opened. This was located in the building of the former Prussian garrison hospital at Heveliusplatz 1-2. The building was a large one, and part of it had been awarded to Poland in 1922 by the Inter-Allied Council for the Division of Prussian Property. The other parts of the building housed the Danzig police station and an employment office. The post office at Heveliusplatz was the first Polish post office accessible to the public. This post office was to become a major source of friction between the population of Danzig and the Polish authorities. On the day the new post office in Heveliusplatz opened, the 5th of January 1925, 10 Polish mailboxes were hung up throughout the city, and Polish postal workers delivered their letters in Danzig. A lengthy dispute developed between the Danzig and Polish authorities over the permissibility of these measures. The League of Nations Council was then called upon to decide, and it based its opinion on that of the Permanent Court of International Justice in a ruling of the 11th of May 1925. It ruled that Polish mailboxes could remain hung up in a more or less closely defined area that included the port and the entire Danzig city centre, but not in the outer districts of the city. However, these mailboxes were deliberately hung on buildings that were owned by Poles. This meant that no Danziger or German could legally do anything about it, although of course the mailboxes were subject to vandalism. During the period of the Weimar Republic, relations between Germany and Poland were bad. After the National Socialist seizure of power, there was a thaw, mainly due to the way that some within the Polish Sanacja regime admired Hitler. However, this was not to last. Meanwhile, the Nazis won the election to the Volkstag in May 1933, gaining a majority in the Danzig parliament. In 1935 it won again, although this time using fraud and violence to do so. The opposition appealed to the League of Nations, which did nothing, and then the opposition appealed to the Polish government. It replied that it was quite happy to work with the National Socialists, and also did nothing. In this way, the Polish government could have afforded some assistance to the anti-Hitler opposition in Danzig, but chose not to do so. It would have cause to regret this awful decision in a very short time. The Polish government, alongside the United Kingdom and France, did not say anything when Hitler occupied the Rhineland or annexed Austria. It further participated in the rape of Czechoslovakia, seizing a part of the country around Český Těšín, thus helping eliminate two potential allies in a future conflict with Nazi Germany. In the aftermath of the land grabs in Czechoslovakia, the German Minister of Foreign Affairs, Joachim von Ribbentrop, invited the Polish ambassador Josef Lipski to meet him in Berchtesgaden. Here Ribbentrop raised the question of the free city of Danzig and suggested that it be incorporated into the Reich, and that an extraterritorial motorway and dual railway line go through Poland in order to link East Prussia with the rest of Germany. Lipski said that he would report this to his government, and the meeting seems to have ended in a very friendly spirit. The point was not pressed by the German side. However, after the annexation of the Memel region from Lithuania and the occupation of all of Moravia and Bohemia by the Nazis, the Polish government at last realized that it would be next on the list, and because of its earlier policies had no potential allies on its borders. As far as the Free City was now concerned, the Polish border security, police and military tightened security around it. The Polish army developed plans for defending the military base at Westerplatte and the post office in the centre of the city. As far as the post office was concerned, many of the workers were members of the Polish Army Reserve. The plan was that in the event of attack on the building, it was to hold out for up to 6 hours whilst assistance was sent from the Polish army based in Tczew. To that end, 10 additional employees were sent from Bydgoszcz and Gdynia who had had the appropriate military training. Some were professional soldiers who, on discharge to civilian life, were sent to Danzig to work in the postal service. In April 1939, Second Lieutenant Reserve Engineer Konrad Gutgerski was sent to the Polish post office in Danzig. His task was to prepare the post office for defence. He had previously been employed by Polish intelligence in operations in Czechoslovakia, one in Zalozia and the other in Transcarpathian Ruthenia. He arranged for weapons to be brought in together with ammunition. He had some of the trees cut down outside the post office to provide for a better field of fire. Now, what is clear about the tactics here is that they imagined that an attack would come from the population of the free city of Danzig, either on the military base at Westerplatte and at the same time on the post office being more highly threatened. The Westerplatte was some distance from the city centre and in any case had a border which could be defended by regular troops. The post office didn't offer any of these things. Furthermore, and this is really what is quite ridiculous about this plan, it relied on the post office workers being able to telephone the military base in Tczew. And so they obviously hadn't considered that the telephone line could be cut. The tactics which had successfully worked in Czechoslovakia, accusing that country of abusing its German minority, were once again employed. The press, controlled completely by the Nazis, encouraged anti-Polish sentiments, both in Germany and in the free city of Danzig. Attacks on Poles on the streets of the city were now becoming more and more frequent. The police and the paramilitary units of the local National Socialist German Workers' Party cooperated with the Wehrmacht in preparations for the approaching confrontation. A military training program was developed. Both recruits and professional German officers were secretly transferred to the free city of Danzig, and construction of a new pontoon bridge over the Vistula, road repairs, and the adaptation of public buildings to barracks was started. Links to videos I've done on the rise of the Nazi Party in the Free City, as well as on the SS Heimwehr Danzig and the camp at Danzig-Matzkow, are all given below. Arms, ammunition, and military equipment were hastily gathered and smuggled in on an increasingly large scale, mainly from East Prussia. This all happened despite the objections from the Polish side. In June 1939, various police and SS units were set up, including the Eberhard Group and the SS Heimwehr Danzig. They were supplied with weapons, including artillery and anti-aircraft guns smuggled in from the east. The objective of these units was clearly to be used against Polish positions and the Polish-speaking population in Danzig, and from there to those Poles living in the Polish corridor in Poland itself. The Danzig police was initially assigned 180 officers to take over the Polish post office at Heveliusplatz. The assault was planned to be carried out by 3 assault groups, each consisting of a dozen or so policemen. Each group was to consist of 2 officers armed with submachine guns, 2 equipped with axes and wire cutters, and 2 with explosives, as well as 1 officer who spoke Polish. 2 groups, numbering 30 policemen in total, were entrusted with attacking the post office building from the south, that is, from the police station. After blowing up the wooden fence surrounding the building, the first was to occupy the western part of the yard and then take over the ground floor. The second, following the same route, would take over the basements. They were to be followed by a support group, also consisting of 15 policemen, whose task was to control the exit from the post office from the south. The third assault group, consisting of 19 policemen, were ordered to attack from the east. That is to say, from the yard in Ramstrasse, which is today Sukianica. After entering the post office building, it was to take over the stairwell and the attic. The task of the equally large support group following it was to control the entrances and search the floors and the attic. It was planned to close the nearby streets for the duration of the action. 24 policemen were assigned to this task. The attackers were to be supported by riflemen placed in the windows or on the balconies of nearby buildings, and the crews of 3 light machine guns, a total of 43 policemen. As a reserve, a unit of 19 officers was held inside a second police station. Its task was to take the prisoners. Another 6 policemen were to guard them after capturing the Polish post office. In the action, in addition to the designated officers from the nearest police station and the auxiliary policemen, Hilfspolizei, SS men and police from Berlin were to be made available as reinforcements. We can see in the newsreel footage that a number of signs had been prepared as well, warning the local population not to enter the area. What is surprising, however, is that the German side considered that so many personnel would be needed for what appears to be a relatively straightforward task of securing half a building. How this was to be worked out for the attackers will be examined in part 2.